welcome Peter Chen, FAPA 总会会长陈正义律师 keynote speech, Taiwan in the international community, dangers and opportunities ahead. 那大家掌声鼓励鼓励。
Testing. 但总会长、副会长、各位台湾人艺术协会贵宾甲朋友，大家晚安，大家好。我的名叫陈正义 Peter Chen， 我是即马现任的FAPA总会会长。我真欢喜有机会，今日甲大家分享我的想法。我有一点甲林秘书较无同款是，我的英文比我台语会较好，所以我会选小我用英文来解释。Ladies and gentlemen, I'm extremely pleased and very honored to be here. As a lawyer, we're obviously not smart enough to get into medical school. That's why I went to law school. But I have to say that I'm not a malpractice attorney. I'm a friend of the doctors. When you look at the politics today, whether in Taiwan or US, majority of the politicians are lawyers, right? And some people may say that's the problem with our society today. There are too many lawyers. But I see a trend changing today, even in Taiwan. In Taiwan today, we have two mayors who've done very well. One is, of course, Dr. Lai, who's the mayor of Tainan, and one is Dr. Ko, mayor of Taipei. I think why they've done well is because they're objective and they're honest. I will share with you a short story I had with Dr. Ko. I first met Dr. Ko when he came to visit before the election in San Francisco. I treated him to gulami. He seemed very happy. And then the next year I went to visit him. The first thing he said, without even saying hello, is, "Hey, Chen-09102016, So I think what we need in politics today is to be honest and be objective. And the issue facing Taiwan today, we have to be objective and be realistic. I would like to start off with a little bit of analysis of the current situation between US, China, and Taiwan. The United States and China are the two biggest countries in the world. They're expected to work with each other. In fact, I call the relationship uncomfortable because they have to work with each other, but they don't seem to like it. The reason why they have to work with each other is because as the two largest economies in the world, their combined GDP is larger than the next 10 biggest. So their impact on the world is tremendous. If they cough, if they get a cold, the world suffers. They also have reason to rely on each other. For example, China is the largest holder of US debt. In fact, China holds 20% of the United States foreign debt. 20%, 1.25 trillion. Now the difference is Japan is next, 1.24 trillion. But nobody seems to care. Nobody's afraid of Japan, but everybody's concerned about China. One of the reasons why China and US have to depend on each other is their economy. China is the largest market for United States agricultural product. In the United States, the agricultural industry holds a lot of lobbying power. Their decisions, their position influence a lot of politicians and whether they sell it to China. Conversely, the same is true. A lot of products, agricultural products from China comes into United States market. For example, one of the research shows that 50% of the cod sold in the United States come from China. Yet, despite all these integrations and reliance on each other, US and China still have a lot of issues. One of the most popular issues on the talk show circuit is the US trade deficit. The problem with the deficit is that it has grown double. From 20 years ago, 24% of the United States deficit was with China. Today it's 50%. Now, trade deficit sometimes is not a bad thing. There are a lot of complicated formulas why deficit is good or bad. But there are other issues. Human rights is a major issue between the United States and China. Of a particular importance of human rights includes intellectual property rights. The United States has a special 301 report where they investigate violations of international violations of IP rights. IP rights includes piracy, and it costs the United States firm about $300 billion in profit. Now, aside from economics, there are a lot of 小动作 between the US-China relations. I included this picture because it just happened this past week. This is a picture of President Obama exiting a plane at the G20 summit in China. Normally, the host country, which is China, gives the best reception to all countries. That includes them having a red carpet at the front door of the airplane. So for the rest of the 18 countries, China did that. But for the United States, they didn't put out a red carpet for Obama. In fact, they made him exit from the belly of the plane. It became a major political firestorm because there was even arguments between the staff of two countries. One of the United States staff says, "This is our plane. We get to decide where we want to exit." And China responded, "This is our airport." The intent of China to challenge the United States, especially during Obama administration, happened very early on. This is a picture of a Copenhagen summit on climate change in 2009. At the summit, the United States was ready to propose an agreement that would reduce emissions by a very substantial level. The United States is the biggest country, biggest emitter of pollutants. The United States, by logic, is the most important. Except China didn't want to meet with the United States. So what happened? China had a secret meeting with India, Brazil, South Africa, and other countries. So the story goes, Hillary Clinton was looking for the Prime Minister of China, and she just couldn't find it. So she sent her staff out to look. The staff says, "Madam Secretary, the Chinese is having a secret meeting." So Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, to give them credit, they ran to the meeting. The Chinese Secret Service trying to stop them. But Obama says, "No, I'm the United States President, I'm going in." So he pushed the door open and he said, "Mr. Premier, we're ready to talk now." So the relationship between the United States and China is very complicated. They have to work with each other, but they don't want to. It also partly explains, later on I'll show you, why the United States wants to support Taiwan, but its hands are tied in some ways. Now for Taiwan and China relationship, I call it one-sided. One of my professors asked me to give an example, and I said, well, It's kind of like the high school quarterback, China. Very popular. Likes the prettiest girl in the classroom, Taiwan. And he keeps wanting to ask her to the prom, and she says no. So he threatens everybody else, you can't ask her, she's mine. The reason why Taiwan-China relationship is one-sided is because that's exactly what it is. At this point, Taiwan is over-reliant on Chinese market. This is a chart that starting in 1991, about 15%, Taiwan invests about 15% of its total investment in China. Today, Taiwan's total foreign investment, 64% of that goes to China. This means 64% of the Taiwanese businesses and Taiwanese savings are invested in China. So China controls 64% of Taiwanese available money in investments. It doesn't end here. 40% of Taiwan's exports goes to China. Only 11% of Taiwan's exports goes to the United States. Only 9% goes to Europe, 6% goes to Japan. This is a big change from about 25% in 2000. So we're seeing a 15% increase of Taiwanese export to China. So what's the global impact? People say, well, if they're buying our goods, we should not complain. But the indirect impact is that the total trade for Taiwan and the world decreased. At the peak in 2000, Taiwan's trade constituted 2% of the world trade. About 3 years ago, it was 1.45%. We're talking about $300 billion or more. And why does the percentage decrease? Because once Taiwan is reliant on a single country, everything that single country does impacts Taiwan. Now, other than economics, in terms of diplomatic relations and cultural relations, China has substantial influence. This is an article about Zhou Ziyi. She, I think, was 16 years old at the time. She was part of a band in Korea. In a very innocent video, she was holding the flag. And she was marked as Taidu Fence. And she was almost forced to resign and leave the band. It caused an outrage, not just in Taiwan, but it made the Wall Street Journal. Same thing with Taiwan's efforts to join international organizations. The United States Congress and Taiwanese Americans work very hard for US Congress to require the White House to support Taiwan to join international civil aviation organizations. Membership, statehood is not required as a membership, meaning you don't need to be a country to join officially. What happened? Well, China is trying to skirt the rules. The current Secretary General of ICAO is Chinese, so she decided not to issue an invitation to Taiwan. Now comes to the better news. This is the US-Taiwan relations. I call it the officially unofficial. It's like you're dating, but you can't tell anybody. The Taiwan Relations Act was actually passed in 1979, so it's 37 years old. How does Taiwan Relations Act help Taiwan? Well, it helps to promote US-Taiwan relations by maintaining at least some form of diplomatic relations, even though it's unofficial. Dr. Lin talked about the visa waiver program. This means people from Taiwan do not need to obtain a visa when they visit, for the most part. You still need to go through a basic process, but it's much, much simpler. There's very limited countries that get this privilege. Now, to give you a little background, this is the effort over 10 years of both the government in Taiwan and Taiwanese American here. This requires at least 3 factors. Any visitors from Taiwan, their performance in the United States is a factor. That means if you overstay, it's an X for Taiwan. If you follow the rules and leave, it's a positive. It requires Taiwanese government to share data, security information with the United States, and also requires Taiwanese Americans to ask for congressional United States support. So after over 10 years, Taiwan got that status. Taiwan Relations Act also helps Taiwan because part of the law requires the United States to sell weapons to Taiwan. Now, for those that don't know what Taiwan Relations Act is, it is an actual United States law. The White House must abide by it. It sets certain rules to follow in U.S.-Taiwan relations. Taiwan is the only country that has a law passed in all of United States law. There are no laws for Israel, for India, for Russia, anybody. Now the Taiwan Relations Act also helped Taiwan to join the WHO. The World Health Organization is a big factor, and I think NAMA is a big factor in this happening as well. I have a lot of NAMA friends that help lobby members of Congress to send their strong signal for the White House to support Taiwan to join WHO. So these are sort of the basics of the U.S.-China-Taiwan relations. So you have the nervous relationship between the U.S. and China. You have the very one-sided relationship between China and Taiwan. And you have the overall pretty positive between U.S. and Taiwan, but very slow developing relationship. The danger with any of these relationships is that it may change. The current danger that Taiwan faces is every time China meets with the United States, whether it's between the President, Secretary of State, China always include Taiwan as an issue. The reason why this could become a danger is all it takes is a little slip up for it to become a backward step. I'll give you a current example. The official United States position has always been U.S. opposes any unilateral change in Taiwan Straits. That means the United States doesn't want to see China or Taiwan take an aggressive step to change what it is now. And the United States President always mentions the One China policy and Taiwan Relations Act and the 3 Taiwan Communique. Last week, Xinhua, which is a news agency owned by China, reported that President Obama said for the first time, the United States opposes Taiwan independence. Now, nobody else said that. Xinhua reported that. The credibility of Xinhua as a state-owned agency speaks for itself. The danger with that is any slip-up in words might be misconstrued. Luckily, the White House issued a statement right away clarifying, saying the United States does not support any unilateral change. Give you an example of how a little word slip-up may cause some difficulties. The Kuwaiti War in the 1990s partly happened because there was a miscommunication of words between ambassadors in the Middle East. The story has it that Saddam Hussein sent his delegates to ask what the United States response would be if they invaded. And somehow there was a miscommunication between the US official and Iraqi side. And Iraqi side heard that the United States is vague. So Iraqi took that to mean it's okay. So that's why in the game of politics and diplomacy, every single little word matters. Now, the most obvious danger that Taiwan also faces is military and national security. According to the most recent Department of Defense report, China has more than 1,500 missiles aimed at Taiwan. And there's a substantial discrepancy in the military equipment, including submarines, personnel, and the Air Force. This is a realistic point. If there's ever any conflict, Taiwan would need support of the international community. To give you an example of discrepancy, China's budget for defense is 13 times the amount of Taiwan. And in fact, most people think this is higher because when China issues its numbers, they usually lower it. As a comparison, the orange one is the Chinese military spending. It's increased by double-digit percentage for the last 15 years. Compared to its neighbors, Japan and India, it's flat. So China is making a strong move in Asia. Another danger that Taiwan faces is diplomatic isolation. Currently, Taiwan has 22 formal diplomatic countries that recognize Taiwan. The most famous, perhaps, is the Vatican, the Pope. Even this is a little concern of reports, whether true or not, that Vatican is ready to enter into a diplomatic relationship with China. And for the history of relationship between Taiwan and China, whenever China establishes diplomatic relations, it always asks the other country to cut off ties with Taiwan. Now, even Taiwan's participation in international organizations is an issue. Taiwan has been allowed to join WHO, actually WHA Assembly, an organ within WHO, as an observer. But that also depends on who's in charge of WHA. There is a secret memorandum by the personnel of WHA that says, anytime Taiwan joins, it must come under China. In terms of trade, Taiwan also faces a lot of difficulties. One of the popular arguments maybe about 4 or 5 years ago with FAPA. The argument at that time was, if Taiwan joins FAPA, which is a trade agreement with China, Taiwan would prosper. To give you a few basic facts, Taiwan has trade agreements with 5 allies: Panama, Guatemala, Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Honduras. The trade looks like a lot, right? 778.35 million. But it makes up less than 0.1% of Taiwan's overall trade. Now, back to the argument, is FAPA good for you or bad for you? You meaning Taiwan. The big argument back then was, if you join FAPA, it'll open the doors for you. Well, after FAPA passed, Taiwan only signed free trade agreements with 2 other countries. One with New Zealand in 2013, which makes up 0.2% of Taiwan trade, and Singapore, which makes up 4%. These are numbers back then. So the impact of FAPA, positive-wise, is very little. What it does is it makes Taiwan even more dependent on Chinese market. Taiwan's export, trade with China, is double the amount of trade with the United States. In fact, Taiwan sends 39% of its trade to China. This is a 10% increase in 10 years. Now people say, was that good or bad? Let me give you a comparison of other countries. For let's say Thailand, they only trade 13% to China. Singapore, only 14%. Indonesia, 11%. India, actually decreased 4%. So even countries in Asia do not overly reliant on the Chinese market. Now the danger of over-reliance is it causes a whole societal dependence on China. Let me give you an example. 8% of Taiwan's workforce works in Taiwan. These are 8% of Taiwan's human resources that could be served and working in Taiwan. So that's the danger. I give you a lot of danger. Is there a hope? Actually, I think there is. I think that the popular phrase is sometimes 人算不如天算. So Taiwan has been trying very hard to have international space. One of the opportunity came not because of its own planning, but because of what China did itself. This is the South China Sea. As most of you may know, China decided to build an artificial island in South China Sea and claim it as its own, and started to drawing lines around it, claiming it's its own sovereign space. The result? It causes a severe backlash of Asian neighbors. For example, only 7% of population in Japan has a favorable liking to China. Conversely, 66% of Japan likes the United States. Now, people say, well, US and Japan are very close, of course. Well, same thing for Vietnam. Only 60% of Vietnamese like China, 76% favors the United States. And the country neighbors goes on and on. So what's the positive of having this backlash? Well, one is it creates an opportunity for Taiwan to have a bilateral relationship for mutual national security cooperation with these neighbors. One opportunity is TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, I'll be honest, this doesn't look good for now because both Clinton and Trump have said they won't support it now. But TPP is an effort by the United States to create a trade pact excluding China. And why does Taiwan benefit if it joins? Because these countries not only account for 36%, these are countries you want to be associated with, right? Canada, Peru, Australia, New Zealand. These are the countries that share the same values and can come to your defense when necessary. Now, of course, the United States, they're feel realistic too. Reason why they want TPP, well, it helps them, right? They benefit by $191 billion with the TPP. If they let China's own trade pact pass, they lose $626 billion. Now, this is the most obvious. I have other reasons why there are opportunities for Taiwan to join international organizations and for Taiwan to be stronger. The first is the change in political landscape in Taiwan. This is based on the feedback from talking with a lot of friends on Capitol Hill, State Department, think tank, and other policymakers. Now, very quickly, in 2014, there's a big change in the election results. Now, initially, when that happened, some of the policymakers think, well, this is just a local election. It doesn't really mean that much. Right? But when the presidential election came out, and they got two very important numbers. 56% popular votes supported Tsai Ing-wen, and total of 73 seats in 立法院 are pro-Taiwan members. Even though reports in Taiwan reported that election was tied, it's a referendum on mind show. The rest of the world, especially the United States, sees this as a voice of the people of Taiwan that they want to be separate from China. Another number that the US policymaker thought was very important. This is the percentage of Taiwan population that deem themselves as Taiwanese. It went from 17% in 1992 to 60% in 2013. When I was talking to them, they were shocked. Right? They always assume Taiwanese and Chinese are the same. But this number is actually based on, I think, Census University, which is a little conservative too. So they were very surprised at this number. And you see this now. You see the United States policymakers starting to change their position. Dr. Lin mentioned that when Taiwan went to the United States in 2012, they did not like her very much. They were very skeptical, to say the best. In 2016 was the opposite. They almost give her the royal treatment. That's my own words, right? She gets to go to the White House, Department of Defense, talk to every key people you can imagine. Another positive sign that U.S. support of Taiwan is high. This is the Sixth Assurances Bill, 6项保证. Sixth Assurances is important for two reasons. One, it affirms that Taiwan Relations Act requires the United States to sell arms to Taiwan, and China cannot be involved in the discussion. Second, and perhaps most critical, it says the sovereign status of Taiwan needs to be decided by the people of Taiwan. And the bill passed in about 8 months. Very, very fast. Usually a bill takes over a year. This was passed in 8 months and right before inauguration. It sends a strong signal by the United States that it supports Taiwan democracy. Now people ask me, does it make a difference if Hillary Clinton is elected or Donald Trump is elected? I'll be honest, Donald Trump is a wild card. Nobody knows what he's going to do, right? And Hillary Clinton's track record of supporting the United States is there, but she's also very much of a system politician, right? She follows the system. Now, our analysis is no matter who's the president, the United States will support Taiwan for two very critical reasons. One, where Taiwan is located. On the east side of Taiwan is very deep waters. The reason that's important is it allows submarines to depart from there, cannot be detected. So imagine if Chinese submarines was able to take over Taiwan. They were able to hide and navigate to Hawaii or Guam without being detected, right? So from a national security viewpoint, Taiwan is very important. The second very critical reason is freedom of navigation. U.S. trades a lot in Asia. From Taiwan to South Korea, Japan. If China was to take over Taiwan, they can block off this trade. Right? So U.S. would be affected. So then people ask me, with these opportunities, what can we do? I always tell them two things. People of Taiwan, in Taiwan, and Taiwanese Americans. For us, Taiwanese Americans, and I want to give credit to NAMA because of what they did with Taiwan democracy. The reason why I put these three people, these are three key leaders in Congress that have supported Taiwan for a long time. Steve Chabot introduced the Sixth Assurances Bill. Ed Royce, the chairman, I passed it, right? And Sherrod Brown supported it in the Senate. These three people, they have no connection to Taiwan. In fact, they knew very little about Taiwan. The reason they became supported is by individual members of the Taiwanese American community. In fact, the Taiwanese American that introduced them to Taiwan were all doctors. So I have to give a special thanks to doctors. There's one message that public officials, U.S. policymakers would like me to share with everybody is the best way for Taiwan to become stronger in the international community is soft power. Soft power means everything that can melt somebody's heart. That's the direct definition. Culture is one of them. Art is another. The group by NAMA to various countries to give medical aid is another. Right? But I do have a story. And this is sort of a vice. When we go out and promote Taiwan, let's use the word Taiwan because it's easier. I have a story of a Taiwanese American. He and his wife went to visit St. Kitts and Nevis, one of the allies of Taiwan. And he went to a field. It says this project was sponsored by the Republic of China. And so these Taiwanese Americans asked these locals, so when did this happen? And the locals, oh yeah, China came 15 years ago and built it. And our Taiwanese American kept arguing, no, this is Taiwan. So they argued for 10 minutes. And then Taiwanese American says, well, let me show you on Google, right? And then the local says, well, let me show you on dictionary. China is China, right? So the moral story is, when we can, let's use Taiwan to promote Taiwan. Now, Taiwan does have an advantage that a lot of countries don't have. Taiwan is actually very strong in technology, meaning Taiwanese are actually very smart. This is a report by economists. Taiwan consistently ranks in top 10 countries in the world in innovations, meaning Taiwan can build, design, and articulate a lot of new items that can generate a lot of economic success. Lastly, there's another message that American policymakers would like me to relay to everybody. When Sunflower Students movement first happened, they were surprised. They were very intrigued. They didn't know what to think. And then when that turned into election success in 2014 and the presidential election, they recognized the voice of the people of Taiwan. So their message to me to relate to you is, what happens in Taiwan matters. That means what leaders of Taiwan does and what the people of Taiwan does matters very much. I leave these two pictures because Dr. Taiwan is under a lot of pressure, having to deal with a lot of critical issues, including Taiwan-China relations. One of the things that policymakers share with me is, sometimes when you're trying to paint a masterpiece, I think this is what the new government is trying to do, trying to impress people of Taiwan. Sometimes they rely too much on using every color to paint the art. Sometimes you don't need or should not focus on every color, but rather you should focus on the result of painting. A masterpiece like Mona Lisa has a very strong tilt and a very strong color appearance. So maybe it's better to focus on the results that what the audience wants instead of caring too much about the ingredient. Now, I also included this photo is because American policymakers want to know what Taiwan needs. One of the most frustrating things for them is they don't really know what people of Taiwan needs or want. In fact, I have multiple public officials tell me, you know, I wish Taiwan would tell us 1 through 5, this is what we need. Okay? Now maybe this is being done and this message is just not being passed. But I think it's very critical that you can be cautious, but not overly cautious. When you can, tell your friends what Taiwan needs. I think the American policymakers are ready to help. I just came back from Congress this week, and I met with a lot of public officials. And part of the reason why was one of the party's delegations was there, right? It's the New Power Party. When I was making visits with them, they go, "Oh, sunflowers are coming. Is Freddie here?" Right? And the reason why they're so excited is because the people that created the change is here. They want to hear the people that changed Taiwan. They want to know what they think. Right? So my last message is, Taiwan faces a lot of danger, a lot of challenges. And in fact, assistance by the United States may be limited or step by step. But the United States is willing to help. Now, all we need is people of Taiwan to tell us what they want so that we can help them. Thank you very much.